upon with another episode of Out and Up, where we encourage young athletes to achieve their very best outside of the game. And like every episode, we always have awesome guests, just like with stories of their journey that I believe will be impactful on our youth if they just take a minute to just listen. So our guest this week, we have an awesome guest again, Mr. Marcus Crank. And we're not even going to run down just the awesome things Mr. Crank has done. I think as we go through this conversation, you'll just be able to hear a lot of what he was able to experience. And for me, this show is special because the first season we had people that had faced different adversities, but Mr. Crank's story is just special, and that he overcame adversity and just the awesome things that he's doing in the community today. So, Mr. Crank, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Crank, for those that don't know you, first, let us know where you were born and raised.
Well, I was born and raised from Shelby, North Carolina. So it's a little town, it's in Cleveland County, about give or take 30 minutes west of Charlotte, North Carolina. Awesome town / city, I should say.
Okay. Cool. So I guess as I always like to give my guests the connection to sports. Tell us a little bit about your history in sports. And it can start from your youth. What sports did you participate in growing up?
Believe it or not, as you know, everyone can see I'm wearing a basketball championship shirt, right? Because I'm actually actively playing now. But the tender age of, let's say, 7, I actually entered my first tournament, which was in Shelby. And my coach, Coach Dennis Toms, he ran like a summer camp. And so that was my first love of basketball. From the 3-point contest, free throw competitions, the 3-on-3s, I started developing that love at the age of 7. But in between 7 and 9 years old, I also developed a love for baseball. And so I want to say, believe it or not, baseball was actually my first love. I was a huge Ken Griffey Jr. fan. And Atlanta Braves, shout out to them for the World Series champions. But even though I didn't play baseball in high school or anything like that, but I did play travel baseball for a year and a half, and I was pretty good. And up until that time, I was like 11. And so I was still playing basketball. And so at the time, I wasn't playing basketball for any type of AAU. Obviously, me at that age, 93-ish, 94, it wasn't no AAU. It wasn't big like that. And so and me playing for the elementary school just wasn't happening. Just wasn't my cup of tea, so to say. So every summer, I was hustling and bustling, summer camps and stuff like that. And so that gradually led me up to middle school to where I actually told myself, you know what, basketball may be my calling. I was pretty good, had a awkward little left hand hip shot, that everybody used to kind of get on to me about, my uncle mainly, So I think from that point forward, I really, really developed a strong, I guess, attachment to basketball. Of course, I tried out in middle school, got cut my 7th grade year. Tried out again in the 8th grade. Actually made the team, but didn't play. I think around that time, it was just a lot of, my pride was hurt from the prior year of being cut, things like that. I didn't have that Michael Jordan mentality then. Everybody know he got cut 7th grade, came back 8th grade year and just went berserk,
Right.
But with me, maybe I thought basketball just wasn't it, so I tried baseball again, did not work out at all. Some of the guys that I played baseball with, I ended up getting cut. When some of them guys, even when I got up to high school, went on to play travel baseball, went to college to play baseball, and I had a couple that actually played professionally, Wow. And so I played with some major leaguers, no pun intended, so to say.
Okay.
But yeah, man, that's pretty much it, as far as up into high school, So.
Okay. All right. So you let us know you had a history from that in sports. And as you went on through high school, just like, what were some of your experiences? Go on and lead us even throughout high school, just some of your experiences and some of the things that you were able to accomplish when it came to sports on the high school level.
Okay, so in 9th grade, there again, I didn't play basketball. And it's funny, right? I didn't play high school basketball all 4 years. And it wasn't that I wasn't good or that I felt that 2 years prior from being cut in middle school affected me. I honestly I think I found my calling, and that was running track, right? Everybody as kids played hide and go seek, played football tag. I mean, I played on the side streets with no shoes on, coming in the house with blisters on my feet, holes on my socks, and so
And that's what kids,
yeah.
And I'm sorry for cutting you off, but that's what kids don't understand today, that true passion and love for it. I think so often kids get into sports, and not saying there's not places where kids don't still do it, barefoot in the streets, but for the most part, I don't think our kids have that same love and passion. Like, it's typically this instant goal to be professional. And I think to have that one goal to gain the accolades and the spotlights of playing on the big stage, where so many make it to that stage, whether it's high school, college, and pros, and they don't have that passion. And what you're saying, I think, speaks to that love and that passion that you have for doing what you were doing at that age.
Oh yeah, most definitely, man. You hit the nail on the head. Now with social media, you got all of these social outlets and other ways other than just high school to get noticed. I mean, a guy can play AAU basketball and get picked up by Carolina or a blue blood school just from playing AAU. You see what I'm saying? And so there's so many outlets opposed to you and I coming up through school. We had to have no discrediting the way that they operate for us the schools now, but we really had to have good grades. Or if you didn't have good grades, it was done. So now you got some guys who are in sports, their talent overrides the grades, in a way. And so I think you kind of give them the short end of the straw. You're not giving them the longevity that they deserve. Like you mentioned, it's the instant gratification. Once that's why I think I agree with the sports world saying, instead of having these Kevin Garnetts coming out of high school making all of this money, okay, make them work for something. We didn't have that luxury. And so so like I mentioned in 9th grade, I developed a love for track. And so with my newfound love of track, I mean, I was good. I was fast, man, like naturally, just fast. And so 9th to 10th grade, I don't think I took it as serious. Like I mentioned, I ran all year. Obviously, track is a spring sport, but if you're really into it to be something, you ran all year. Hershey's Classics. You got the Prefontaine Junior Classics. I ran all of those. Williamsburg, Virginia, all the way to Oregon. Oklahoma. I ran. Even as a teenager, 13, 14 years old. Even though I didn't win them, but I was very good. Mind you, I'm 13 running against 17, 16-year-olds and losing by a few tenths of a second, and so I'm in the mix. I'm in the mix of these fast runners. And so I knew, I like, dang, I'm pretty fast. I'm faster than I thought, and so when I got to 9th grade, I'm like, you know what? Let's see where this can take me. So granted, I couldn't have both, right? I couldn't run track and play basketball. And so I'm like, okay, which one can I do? I have to dedicate my time to one sport. It was too many distractions for me to try to be a multi-sport star. You know what I mean? It was too many influence. It was too many things came with being the guy that everybody, like what's the term? A sports prodigy or a blue chip player,
Yeah.
And so I just chose, like I mentioned, I was fast. They persuaded me to play football. I was like, you know what, I can play football and run track, and it doesn't intercede with each other. And look at, what do you know? I was good in football, because of my speed, and so now I'm thinking like, dang, I'm playing football. And mind you, the high school I went to in Shelby, North Carolina, they're ranked in the nation in football. I think total, we have a number of 26, 27 championships total. And that's in two separate eras of the divisions now, so pretty, when you come from a school like that, you gotta kind of uphold your title, the scale.
And I was able to experience, catching it on the back end this year. I was able to connect with Mr. Crank and able to come connect with them. And we'll talk later on how I connected with them. But while being in Shelby, I was able to catch a playoff game this year. And then I was able to stream live them playing in the championship this year. And so I was able to be a part of just the craze in Shelby and just the heart and the passion of the town following their football team. So just that quick on the back end of the season, I was really able to be a part of that. And so I enjoyed it. So Shelby definitely has it going on when it comes to their following and the football program. And so this year, this was championship. Do you know exactly what number this was this year?
Under the new era, under the reconstructed era, I think it was championship number 19. And I think it was our 26th or 27th overall. So yeah, so
wow. And what group again is Shelby in?
We're in the 2A class.
2A here in North Carolina, but definitely a powerhouse and actually, if you all stay tuned, we're actually in the works. We should have actually one of the young players from Shelby on with us later this season. So definitely stay tuned because you'll get to meet one of Shelby's own, and he's actually just in the 10th grade. And he's doing awesome things, not only on the field, but also in the classroom. And that was how he was brought to my attention, watching somebody's post that had some academic scholars that was doing well, both in the game as well as on the field, in the game as well as in the classroom. And so I was able to be introduced to this young gentleman thanks to Mr. Crank. I met the young gentleman. I don't want to give his name up yet, but I met the young gentleman. And if schedules permit, we'll have one of Shelby's own football players on later this season. So I'm going to let you continue just with football and just some of the things you were able to experience as far as championships and just in your personal career. I'm going to let you go ahead and finish that off. I don't want to interrupt you no more.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like Mr. Rogers was mentioning, man, I'm not bragging or being boastful, but I am prideful, right? And I think everybody should have a sense of high pride for their school, especially if you was involved like I was, being as good as I was in sports and being a part of a program that holds a high title, a high regard in the nation. It's like going to Alabama when it comes to college football. I mean, that's how Shelby is in high school football, just being that's a perfect parallel comparison. And so you have a sense of arrogance that's hard to contain, and so like I mentioned, I played 3 of my 4 years there. I have me a championship ring. My senior year, we won, and so and that was a very joyous time for me. And I think even just wearing my jersey, on game day and like going to a pregame supper the day before, and then you go out to Walmart. That was the thing for us, going to hang out at Walmart, wearing our jerseys. You got kids coming up asking for autographs. And so we're like, wow, I mean, we're just in high school, but we didn't know that the impact that we had on those kids, just like when I was their age, the impact that the high schoolers and abroad had on me. To me, going to a Shelby High football game at 7, 8 years old was big. I felt like I was in it watching Cam Newton or somebody, the Panthers. I mean, so that was the impact. And so it was a goal to make it to high school and put on that jersey. And so I think at the time I started playing, it didn't really hit me as hard like it did my senior year opposed to my freshman year. Because my senior year, like I remember when we won, I fell to my knees crying. We won pretty easily. It was 34-14. That was the score. Played at Chapel Hill, which is my favorite college. And so I think just the whole aura and just the moment hit me like, gosh, it's really over. So everything kind of come rushing to pass. And dude, I was crying, like happy. I was just that happy and knowing like, dang, it's really over. But at the same time, knowing I'm a part of history. I got a ring that I can showcase and flaunt, at times. What I'm saying? My name is in the trophy case with my teammates who took it the distance and took advantage of the moment. So it was awesome, man. It was an awesome deal.
That's good. And again, definitely I think you all those who have never heard of Shelby football program, you'll see, because they definitely have something awesome and big going on in Shelby, North Carolina. So it was awesome to meet Mr. Crank. So I want to actually do something different, Mr. Crank. I want to cover all the middle things that I think are that I believe will be awesome, and just showing people how you overcame. But I want to really jump to the end first and how I met Mr. Crank. Mr. Crank, me and him connected, myself doing some public speaking. Everybody knows my heart and passion behind mentoring. And so Mr. Crank was giving some information, and we were able to connect. We spoke, and I was blessed to be able to take part in an event he had there in Shelby and speak to some young people there in Shelby. Mr. Crank, I'm gonna jump to the end, and then we're gonna go back. Because that was kind of how I was introduced to all the adversity and all the things that you overcame. Like, I knew you from where you are today, and then we went back and had some conversations. So it's kind of how I want to lay it out for those that's watching. What is it that you do today, Mr. Marcus?
Oh, so right now, what I do, I'm the mentoring coordinator here in Cleveland County. And so what that is, I pretty much coordinate a mentoring program for our youth from the ages 6 to 17, and sometimes abroad older, just depending on the situation. So I coordinate that, meaning I go out in the community, I train potential mentors, which are adults, it could be teenagers, to kind of be there as a mentor to our youth. And so I'm connected with the DJJ, which is Division of Juvenile Justice, and our umbrella company, which is Communities and Schools, which is a national program that's in the part of the school system that we kind of put programs in place opposite of mentoring program to help kids to graduate, help them with developing social skills, integrity, just the moral values of being a man and or a woman, and how to prosper in life, right? And so when it comes to the students, we push them to graduation. You know, that's the ultimate goal. And of course, with my program, I have a lot of kids who are up under what's called a diversion contract, which means some of the kids have gotten into some trouble with the law. So instead of them going to jail, or worse, going to prison, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor, they have what's called a diversion contract, where the judge or the DA will contact me, or where they contact me through what's called a court counselor. So the court counselor is like a high school guidance counselor, you know, in a sense. They kind of mediate. Instead of the kid going straight to the principal's office, most of the time, depending on the grave, I guess the seriousness of the situation, you know, the guidance counselor can, you know, step in, talk to the kid and talk to the principal, like, look, I have an idea. Let's try this instead, you know? And so that's kind of how the court counselor is. And so, so let's say if a kid has gotten into some trouble, petty theft or anything like that, or even gotten, you know, into a lot of fights at school. So what they would do, instead of charging them, they'll contact me and say, all right, Mr. Crank, this is what we have. This is the paperwork. We got this kid. You know, he or she is involved in this, that, and the third. It could be gang activity. It can just be whatever the case. And so they say, you know, this is a good kid, but we think that you can help them instead of us just sending them straight to a jail, you know, which is what happens most of the time. A lot of good people, I should say, are sent to jail and not really given a second chance because they just didn't have that sense of foundation or direction along their course of actions. And so what they would do, meet with me, and then with my program, I offer a plethora of opportunities for the kids, you know, even when it comes from tutoring to behavioral issues, emotional issues, depression, bullying, you name it, we deal with it. And so so a lot of the guys, the kids, sign a year diversion contract, meaning if they complete my program successfully and I can prove that they've overcame whatever it was, the issues that lies in front of them or been burdening them, they program out, which means now once they program out of my program, they have a clean slate at life now. There's no more charges. The charges are totally expunged from their record. And then in addition to that, a lot of the kids, I've developed a program thereafter that's called Junior Mentors, right? Okay. So let's say if I have a kid who programmed out, let's say if he used to be into a gang or actively or even associated with a gang, he may come to me and say, you know what, Mr. Crank, I love the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me. I've learned a lot. I think I can help guys in my situation. I'd like to be a junior mentor. There it is. So now he's signed up pretty much for life, you know, wow. With being a mentor, being that ear for them throughout life, you know. And so wow. It's a very awesome program. You know, wow. It's kind of a each one teach one type method. You know, wow. A lot of kids, they learn a lot. And so, and I give the peers the opportunity to teach, to be the one to talk to them, because even though I'm pretty grounded both ways when it comes to the streets, when it comes to the school, I can relate to pretty much anything. But I think hearing it from a direct peer is kind of an eye opener for them. It's like, wow, and then there it is, so I kind of pour gas on the fire with that and then let the chips fall where they may. And like I mentioned, it's a positive outcome. I mean, it's awesome,
That's good. That's good, Mr. Crank. And so those listening or watching, as you can see, Mr. Crank is doing awesome things in the community. I just love connecting with brothers like Mr. Crank, because often what is disheartening to me is that there's not often that you can't go to different communities, especially impoverished communities or less fortunate communities, where there's not people complaining or upset or voicing their concerns about, their community or their city and what's going on. However, what I notice all too often, a lot of times people vocal doesn't line up with their action. And so too often we have people that don't want to see their community stay where they're at, but we're too lazy to get up and do something. And something for me is always doing what you can do. So for some people, you have the ability to give time. Some people, you have connections, the resources. Some people you may not have the time, you may not necessarily have resources that you can connect for programs and stuff like that, but you might financially be able to give to a cause to help programs to be developed. And so what I'm challenging people today is just do something. I just recently bought a t-shirt, and I'm sure people will see it on one of these shows, but it says, say less and do more. Say less, it kind of has that look of the whole Payless store, but it says, say less and do more. And what I'm challenging people is, if we're ever going to see a change in our communities, we have to do something. We have to be more active. And so, I'm always blessed to be connected with people like Mr. Crank. And thank you for what you're doing there in Shelby. I think the old saying, it takes a village. It truly takes a village. And so if we want to see some change come, then we're all going to have to put our hands into the pot and make sure that this thing comes together. So appreciate what you're doing in Shelby. Hoping I can get and learn from you as time go on and get some of that, bubbling here on the Fayetteville. But that's where I met Mr. Crank at. And that was the person I was introduced to. And so I know we stopped on the sports and him winning the championship. And we're going to fly through this one little piece, because I always give you a little bit of post high school and sports. So you were able to excel in the sport. You were able to do well in football. But you didn't just leave high school and go straight into playing college ball. What did you do post high school?
So post high school, and I went to a community college, right?
Okay.
In Shelby. And I took up computer programming. And so I know a lot of people would have an unanswered question, like, why didn't he go to a major college, with the accolades that he has?
Right.
And I think one of the major reasons is because, like I mentioned at that time, I mean, I was a very prideful individual. And I think I didn't receive the support and the knowledge that I deserved, right? And so, which is something that we didn't mention, to go back to me running track or being as fast, I'm a state champion. I'm a three-time conference champion. I got 2 records. One of them was recently broke in track. One of them still is being held at Shelby High as we speak, and that's been 20-something years ago.
Wow.
And so being that I have such a high reward record at Shelby High, you would think, wow, Mr. Crank Marcus probably went to Arkansas or Florida or Florida A&M. I wish.
Right.
Those are still some of the top track programs in the nation. Right. Texas, I wanted to go to those places. And so, I was getting offers from these D2 colleges. No, not discrediting the school, but it's like Michael Jordan in his heyday, yes, he wasn't really making a lot of noise until he hit D-Shot,
Right.
And so once he hit D-Shot, everybody started noticing him, like, wow, this kid pretty good. So it's like Michael Jordan graduating high school and nobody giving him the benefit of the doubt. You know, our JUCO college is giving him a 2-year ride or something. You know, you're gonna feel bad. You're gonna feel disrespected. Like, what? That's all I mean to y'all? You know, to this school, everything I've done, everything I put forth to this program, this is the best that y'all can put out for me. And so that's how I felt, man. And I was hurt over it, just to be frank about it. And so instead of me getting advice, talking to some people, I just told myself, you know what? I just go to a community college, hang around Shelby, give me a job. Because my work ethic, now I work now. Now I was working since I was 13 and a half years old. My mom wasn't playing that. You know, so I got a worker's permit and I was working busting dishes, man, for forever, all through high school, you know. So, and plus I just like to have my own things. I got to that age where I just got tired of asking for stuff. You know, I was ready to get my license, ready to do this, ready to get out in the world and live, you know. And so I think I was kind of ahead of my time when it came to the work world, you know. And so, so yeah, man, graduation, I went to community college, got an associate's in computer programming. And so I graduated in 99. So this puts me around 2001, 2002, right? So I was kind of idling. Like I mentioned, I just hung around Shelby. I was still working out. I wasn't really training like I should have because, like I mentioned, I didn't have no end goal, right? Because I was so mentally warped and disappointed. And I think my mom with my family pushing college. Because I'm going to be honest, when I got to 9th grade, I wasn't thinking about no college. I was focused on graduating and just living life, you know. But I think when people was telling me, unlike today's world, you know, you got to go to college if you want to make it to NBA, you want to make it NFL, if you want to run track in the Olympics, you got to go to college. You know, it's like, what? I have to go to college? Are you sure there's no other way? You know? Right. So that goes with, like me and you once talked about the difference in this generation and my generation. See, now I'm just going to be honest, even with my daughter, I'm going to groom her to where she's going to excel in her grades because that's important. You know, but I think it's wrong now looking back to try to force a kid into college. You know what I'm saying? Because look at so many opportunities out here that a lot of people can take advantage of without college, even when it comes to professional sports. You just get the right person on social media to see somebody playing basketball, you got them. You see what I'm saying? And so it's so many ways, man. And so I think, like I mentioned, I think the short end of the straw, I grabbed it too quickly. You know, I think I was impatient. And I think me myself, I was just wrapped up in success to where, like I mentioned, a sense of arrogance was my downfall. You know, I've built my name up and I'm like, dog, you know, I'm thinking, you know, graduation, I'm finna get a letter. Did here, letter there. I didn't get nothing. I mean, I got them little 2 letters in the mail. Man, I couldn't even tell you what I done with them letters. You know, I probably threw them away, you know, just to be honest. But yeah, so that's what I did. And like I mentioned, I kind of idled down and I just worked, man. Like I said, I didn't have no end goal of going to college. I really didn't want to go, even though me doing schoolwork was never a negative point. I mean, I like doing schoolwork. I like to learn. But I think with me, I think it was kind of pushed on me in a positive way. Now, because like I mentioned, my mom, my parents were excellent. It's just that in my mind, it's like, shit, there has to be another way. You know, it can't just be one option. So that's kind of where I was at between the early 2000s.
So you speak into, let's just say you have a young gentleman and a young lady that's sitting in front of you, maybe coming through your program, or maybe that you're just connected to in sports, with your connection with sports today. Thinking back on, like I said, how you said how things were different with us versus today. What is some advice that you would give that young student athlete that's really looking to go to the next level when it comes to school and preparation, or even when it comes to the sport? What would be some advice that you would give them, even from the middle school standpoint, so that they're prepared and they're planning out the end goal?
Oh, I would first and foremost tell them, don't allow anybody to make a decision for you, including your parents. Because this day and age, let's take, I don't want to give any names, but let's take a prominent basketball player, because we do know that's kind of the wave right now is basketball, high school basketball players, right? Mm-hmm. Social media, that's all you see. You know, these AAU circuits, they're really branding these kids, right? The way they don't even have to go to college now. Some of these kids are getting contracts, multi-million-dollar contracts now. You see what I'm saying? Without college. And so that just goes back to my point what I would tell that certain individual, like, look, if you want to go to college, by all means do it, man, because then I'm going to tell them the benefits of going to college. Trust me, knowledge is power. Yeah. And then with power, there is success if you use it right, positively. And so, but on the flip side of it, I'm going to let them know, first and foremost, don't let anybody dictate your decisions, because a lot of parents, primarily these fathers, they're going to live their life and their success through their kid. Right. You know what I'm saying? That's just a harsh fact of what it is. And so a lot of parents are a hard influence on these kids when it comes to NBA, NFL. You know, they all about the monetary gift of it, you know, the money, the success and stuff, but not really thinking about the well-being of their son or daughter. Because you got to think, at the end of the day, the basketball, the football is going to go away. The next 15 years, that's gone. Okay, right. So let's think about the 15 years after that. So instead of thinking about the next 15 years, double that. Think about the next 30 years. Guess what? What's going to cover those 30 years is your mind, your education. So that's what I'm going to instill in them. Like, look, you got to go, it's education first, man. And I think the main thing is making your decision, right? If you have an end goal of going to college and going to NBA, one of those goals has to be scratched. And you're going to have to scratch the NBA, because you got to think it's only 13% of all scholar athletes make it to the NBA or any professionally, period. Right? So you need to be the opposite end of the stick. You need to be that scholar that's going to graduate college. Let's focus on that. Yeah, it's cool. You know, you go through college, you're good in basketball, but I think a lot of people miscredit the hard work it takes to get to the NBA. I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand what it takes. And I'm gonna tell you now, I used to have thoughts like, man, this may not be for me. Right. You know, I may be all right now. I mean, I'm pretty nice on that court. But when you start running up against these trainers who's been there, done that, even these players, you're gonna be like, oh wow, you're gonna feel like a little ant to a lion. You know what I'm saying? Out in the jungle with no sense of direction. I mean, it's real, you know. And so, you know, it's like eating a cake and not knowing what's the ingredients that it took, the work that it took to bake that cake. You know what I'm saying? So that's what a lot of kids miss, is the ingredients to success, which is school, and just staying grounded, man. And of course, it's the choices. You have to watch who you hang around, who you with, who your influences are. And I think those are some of the major keys that I would point out to that individual to this day.
Right. That's good. And so what I'm going to do is segue, because I think if you thought the things that we've discussed were good, I think for me, what just puts the nail in the coffin with Mr. Crank is just knowing where he is today. And there's even things that he's doing from, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Crank, you've done some coaching, correct, when it comes on the court and everything. You've done some coaching. So another way he's impacted, we're going to touch on it a little bit before we close, but after the community college stage, you go on and I'm going to kind of get us to where I want us to go to now. You just continue your love for the sport, playing pickup. And so life changes a little bit. You're playing pickup, and we're in North Carolina.
In Charlotte. And so me, my dad, my cousin, my brother, every other Sunday, we used to just travel around and go play ball at the church, right? And so this particular Sunday, you know, we're out and about, not really thinking about anything. It was raining. It had been raining. So we had thought about not even going, right? But of course, you know how it is the day before. You know, you anxious. You're like, man, I'm ready to go play. This is Sunday. We get to go play ball at the church. So even through church, instead of me listening to the sermon, I'm thinking about, gosh, I can't wait to go play ball. Did I bring my shoes? You know, I'm trying to think that do I have everything? Because I was just that anxious. That was something that we did as the males, you know, family, the bond, you know, that was our time. And so it had been raining. I remember my dad like, look, man, we probably won't even go, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, gosh, no, that can't be possible, man. We're gonna have to do something. And so anyway, things happened where we were able to go, right? And so with the Hornets Nest Park, which is now, it's called something else. It's a new name now. But anyway, so we're in Charlotte, and so we're just shooting around, stuff like that. And so I don't know how many people is familiar with the And One mixtape tour, right? And so I think And One was the kind of the start of the epidemic of street ball basketball, even to this day. You know, I think without this particular organization or program, there would not be no oohs and ahs of the NBA or high school now, you know? And so, of course, that was a big deal. I used to watch them guys, you know, I followed them, you know, and stuff like that on ESPN and all of that stuff. And so we didn't know that this particular day that the bus was coming through. And for those who don't know or who follow AND1 on ESPN, so basically what they do, so basically AND1 originated in 1993, I think somewhere around there. And so you had 3 owners. And so it started out as a clothing brand, right? And so I think from there, it kind of, being that it was around the culture of inner city kids and stuff like that, you had a lot of rap. It was rapper inspired. You know, you had guys who would rap over beats, but it'd be raps over the overlays of clips from street ball. And so I think with the music industry, the culture of rap integrating with basketball, that's how you come up with the AND1 mixtape tour. And so so that's why every time you watch, even to this day, if you Google the AND1 mixtape, they're playing over raps or some type of music, you know, newfound artists and stuff like that. And so it was kind of a cool idea. And so, of course, that just started a whole wave, man, of all types of crazy stuff, which was awesome. And so, so anyway, the bus came through, right? And so I'm like, wow, that's the AND1 basketball tour. I'm like, what? The bus? You know, so they get out, they setting up all of these, you know, the cameras, stuff like that. And so, so my cousin was like, look, man, you gonna play? I'm like, nah, man, I ain't play. I'm like, yeah, man, you know, so basically you can sign up. Anybody, it's an open run. So during the open run, anybody can sign up. You get a number. And so whatever number you get, that's the number you got to wait to be called on, and they migrate the teams, you know? So of course my number was huge, but I think I had to wait like almost 3 hours to play. And so when my time came, long story short, man, you know, I got on there and did my thing. You know, I was balling. And so we were leaving, and there was a guy that come up to me, you know, asked me what my name was, where I was from, stuff like that. He was like, man, you in college? I said, nah, I'm not in college. He said, okay, well, do you work? I said, yeah, of course I work. He said, well, how would you like to have an opportunity to make the AND1 basketball team? I'm like, what? You serious? You know? He's like, yeah, I'm dead serious. And he said, matter of fact, come with me. So he gave me this pamphlet, this, you know, information packet. I filled it out, stuff like that. So when I gave it back to me, he said, all right, we'll be in touch shortly. So I'm like, all right, cool. So it still hadn't dawned on me that this would be an opportunity, because that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I wasn't arrogant, but I was to the point to where this is just another walk in the park for me, just playing ball. You know what I'm saying? I just like running track. Dude, when I stepped on that track, whoever the other 7 opponents were, you were done. It was not, it never crossed my mind that you was even going to compete, even slightly come close to beating me. Even though, what did I say? How many times did I lose? 3? 3 times out of my 3 years of running, I only lost 3 times. How many people can say that in high school? Gotcha. You know what I'm saying? And so, and granted, to the 3, it was 4, excuse me, because 3 of the times was on me. One time I failed, twice I hit the hurdle and failed. Now, it was one time I legitimately got beat, which was my 10th grade year, but come back and beat the same guy in my senior year. So that's why I kind of don't even really count it. But I lost. I give him that, right? But so it goes without saying, man, it's like Michael Jordan, man. You always, even with the kids that I coach, whoever, it don't matter if you feel you're the worst on the team, I try to instill in them the motivation and that courage to say, you know what, I am one of the best on this court, and I'm going to play like it. So when somebody D'ing you up, the first thing it is, I tell them is like, you know what, they can't stop you, so do what you do. And it ain't all about scoring, it's making the right play. The best player makes the right play. The best player always doesn't make the game-winning shot. That's what a lot of people fail to realize. And so I was one of those individuals. And so, so anyway, we leave, don't think nothing of it. So one day I get a call, and my cousin was like, look, you got something here at the house. And so I had talked to my mama prior and told her, like, be looking out for something, in the mail, blah, 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 stuff like that. So, of course, my mom didn't know what it was. She was just like, okay, AND1, what is that type stuff? You know what I'm saying? And so lo and behold, man, they sent me information, man. A big old manila envelope with the AND1 logo on it with plane tickets and all types of information, insurance policy stuff. It was a whole bunch of stuff, man. And so I filled it out, and then the tickets and stuff like that, I got flown out to Philly. And then from Philly, I got flown out to California, which is where actually the headquarters were, and so, and mind you, all of this happened in 2002. And I actually started traveling in 2003. Because I think just in between time, there's a lot going on. You got to think too, after 9/11, it was just a lot of crazy stuff going on with the traveling and stuff like that. And so, so eventually, man, I started traveling, and like I mentioned that. So the open runs is what I was on, right? So basically, when you travel open runs, you're playing with guys in that particular city. So let's say if they went to Fayetteville, those guys you get to play with against the AND1 team in the same position I was in. So basically, it's like a recruiting process. That's how they found new talent. They go city to city. So while they go in city to city, is each city has their own rappers, stuff like that. And so they just putting this stuff together. Like I mentioned, it was pretty cool how they did it.
So in your case, I guess to break it down for those that didn't know all the background to AND1, I guess we'll take I guess I knew growing up, and they still travel, I think, today, but take the Harlem Globetrotters. Growing up, I think the Harlem Globetrotters always, every time I saw them growing up, they played against, what was it, the Generals or something like that? I think was the name of the team. I forgot the name of the team, but there was a team that they played against.
Harlem Globetrotters, yeah.
So with AND1, you were on contract with AND1, but you played with the players that they competed against in each city.
Yeah, correct. And so one correction, I wasn't under contract then.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay. But of course, touring with them, you get incentives. Like, because of course you got, with the sponsors, Mountain Dew, Foot Locker, Food Line. I mean, it went on and on as far as that's how the payment came. Because I wasn't no hot sauce, nothing like that. Them guys was like in it. They were the staple of AND1, you know what I'm saying? So the time I was there was around the time Professor came. And of course, Professor just took it to a whole nother level, And so obviously when he came, it was around the time when the situation is what I call it occurred with me, And so, so that's pretty much that. Because like I mentioned, even when I mentioned them today, I never got to that point to where somebody can mention my name as, oh, snap, he played for AND1, because it never got to that point, So I was basically, I guess, when in relation to like NBA, a practice squad player, if that makes sense, or a G League, you know what I mean? So, but I still was in and around the confines of the organization. Met the guys, was cool with the guys, but I never got to the point to where I would be known as an AND1 baller or whatever, you know what I mean? And I would never credit myself that way either.
Okay. So you just kind of alluded to it, and we're going to go ahead and kind of get there, but there was a big event coming up with AND1. What was on schedule to happen? And we're going to get into, the incident you just kind of alluded to, but there was a big event. Just touch on it real quick. What was about to go down with AND1?
Well, so the August of 2004 would have been my inaugural event, to where basically I've made a few, because each city a player gets cut, right? And it's up on the players who travel, the actual AND1 players, whether you stay on the bus or not. So I made 3 cuts. So if I made the next cut, now the next event would have been in August, was what you're referring to, which would have been my inaugural event, meaning actually signing a $250,000 contract with AND1, right? Because I've been making the cuts. And so